I'm Maddie, and today I'll be teaching you how and why Greeks performed animal sacrifices. So a sacrifice, or thousia in Greek, to the gods was the most important activity in Greek religion. Sacrifices were often conducted at outdoor altars, at temples to gain favors with the gods. However, today, since it is really cold outside and raining, we will be doing an indoor sacrifice. So sacrifices took place within a sanctuary, usually at an altar in front of the temple. The animal sacrifices were performed with great care, as one slip could spoil the entire thing. The choice of the animal, the method of sacrifice, and the prayers and names invoked were all carefully selected. Through sacrifice, ancient Greeks conceptualized their own place in the world, distinct from animals on the one hand and from gods on the other. According to Greek philosopher Theophrastus, the Greeks sacrificed to the gods for three major reasons: to honor them, to thank them, or to request a favor from them. During animal sacrifices was also one of the few times the community would come together and feast on meat. Sacrifices were a communal affair. Not only were all the members of the community there eating together and bonding socially, but it was believed that the gods were participating directly as well.
These are my helpers, Evie and Lily. Here are the proper items you'll need for a sacrifice: proper clothes, a water carrier, a hymn or a prayer, the animal to be sacrificed, ribbons and flowers, an altar and a temple to be shown later, offerings for the gods that could include incense, flowers, liquids, gifts, jewelry, and food, a knife or machaira, an aulos or a flute-like instrument, a sacrificial basket full of barley and grain, a sphagion or a libations jar, and flowers and branches to decorate the altar. Purification was an important part of Greek religious practices. The aim of purification or cleansing was to rid the person or the community of pollution. Pollution could be caused by an act of impiety or failure to carry out religious obligation properly. For example, performing a sacrifice without first washing one's hands caused pollution. Cleansing oneself with water before the ceremony to remove the dirt of daily life or specific impurities was almost always done. Ritual actions were set apart from usual behavior in several ways: the wearing of special clothing and adornments, the avoidance of certain behaviors or foods, the burning of incense, and the offering of flowers or branches. It was seen as a sign of respect to the gods to wear one's best clothes to the sacrifice. Because we don't really have any authentic ancient Greek clothing, we did our best to make it. The first step to a proper Greek sacrifice is purification. Cleansing oneself from all the dirt of daily life before a sacrifice was seen as a sign of respect. Step 2 is choosing an animal and preparing it for the sacrifice. Aside from species, age, and color, an important factor for the choice of the animal to be sacrificed was the cost and scale of the sacrifice. The animals used in order of preference are the bull or the ox, the cow, the sheep, which was the most common, the goat, and the pig, with the piglet being the cheapest, and finally poultry, but rarely other birds or fish. Goats were sacrificed especially at rituals honoring Bacchus. Sacrificing a dog, a rooster, or a pig were seen as signs of purification. Horses and donkeys are seen on some vases but are rarely mentioned in literature. For a smaller or simpler offering, a grain of incense could be thrown onto the fire. Whoever wished to consult an oracle had to offer a bull. Typically, the animal to be sacrificed was domesticated rather than wild, except in cases of sacrificing to Artemis. Once chosen, the animal would be cleaned, dressed up in ribbons, and taken in procession to the temple or the altar. Today, the animal we'll be sacrificing is this bull. He's already been pre-decorated with ribbons, but we're going to do some more decoration and cleansing for ourselves. Step 3 was the procession to the altar. During the procession, an aulos, or flute-like instrument, was played, and a girl with the sacrificial basket of barley on her head, concealing the knife, would lead the procession. The animal would then be placed on, or in the case of larger animals, beside the altar, and the altar would be delineated by a sort of gated border. In order to prepare the altar for the sacrifice, gifts would be offered to the gods, such as food, jewelry, flowers, or even the burning of incense. To work out who is in the sacrifice and who is not, or who is to be blessed by the gods and who is not, a circle of barley would be spread around, and everyone within the circle of barley would be those who were taking part in the sacrifice. At the sanctuary, participants also washed their hands in water and sprinkled a few drops on the victim animal to cleanse them as well. Before a sacrifice, water or barley would be sprinkled on the brow of the animal. When the animal felt the barley on their brow, they would bow, and this was viewed as a sign of assent for the animal to be sacrificed. It was important that the sacrifice not be treated as an act of violence. Instead, it must be an act in which everyone was a willing participant, mortals, immortals, and animals. Prayer is offered to declare the reason for the sacrifice and call upon the god or goddess. You must give their cult names, say what you are giving to the god or goddess, and ask for something in return. Megalos daskalos Sophia Thea, Palada Athena, iste I epidiokomine Sophia, apo tus sophus, kai tus vasilicus dicaste, deni parque amphivolia oti sas zepernai, canena mystico deninai parapolivati, ime I erostisi, iste I epantisi, afti I thisia, sas prosfero, kai sas paracalo, dos temut in cathodigisi sas. Barley is thrown onto the altar by everyone in the circle, except the person that's performing the actual killing, to ensure that everyone is an equal and willing participant, and not a bystander or observer in the sacrifice. The knife is then revealed from the barley. A few tufts of hair cut off from the animal and thrown onto the fire as a sort of taster for the gods. Knives were used to sacrifice the animals, usually with a cut to the throat, and libation jars, or a bowl to collect the blood, called the phagion, collected the blood from the animal's neck. Large animals were first stunned with a blow from the axe, and then similarly killed with a knife. The victim's blood was spattered over the altar at the sanctuary. Then the assistants butchered and divided the parts. At this point, the sacrifice would become a feast for the gods and mortals alike. The animal would be cooked over open flames on the altar, and the pieces were distributed. To the gods went the long bones with some fat and spices, and sometimes wine. Those would continue to be burned so that the smoke would rise up and to the gods and goddesses above. Sometimes the smoke would be red for omens. To the humans went the meat and other parts of the animal. The final step was to relay the bones of the animal on the altar to honor it and thank it for being a well-behaved animal during the sacrifice. Omens were often taken from the burnt offerings to the gods.